You ever notice how Pokemon rivals aren't the same anymore? There was a time when your rival made you mad. They insulted you, crushed your team, and made you want revenge so badly that it hurt. Now, they give you potions, cheer you on from the sidelines, and cry because you're so amazing. So, what happened? When did Pokemon rivals stop being good? Let's break it down, from Gen 1 all the way to Gen 9, and figure out where things changed. Let's start in Gen 1. When it comes to a rival, Blue is the blueprint, no pun intended. He picks the starter that beats yours. He constantly is one step ahead of you. He's rude, smug, and to top it off, he becomes the champion before you can. When you finally beat him, it's satisfying in a way that Pokemon hasn't really hit since. Then comes Gen 2's Silver. This guy literally steals his starter. He is a full-blown criminal. He hates weakness, sees Pokemon as tools, and looks down on everyone, including you. But over time, he grows. By the end of the game, he's quieter, more reflective. He has an actual character arc. These rivals weren't just roadblocks for you to face and go through. They were characters with attitude, development, and most importantly, presence. Beating them meant something, and you felt a sense of accomplishment when you did. Gen 3 is where the series starts replacing rivalry with friendship. For example, we get May or Brendan, depending on who you play as, and truthfully, they aren't even really trying to beat you. They give you advice, they cheer you on, even give you the HM fly after you beat them. And after 4 battles, they just disappear. They're more of a buddy than a rival. Let's talk about Wally though, since he's an interesting character. He starts off as this sick and timid kid with no friends, who has to leave Petalburg. And by the time you face him at Victory Road, he has grown into a competent and confident trainer. But he's more of a secondary character than your main rival, even though he's the one that you face at the end of Victory Road. Then in Gen 4, we get Barry, who is full of energy. He crashes into you constantly, talks fast, and wants to be the best. But he's not exactly threatening. He loses a lot, his team isn't scary, he's more comic relief than competition. You like Barry, but do you really respect Barry? Probably not. Which is a bummer since his dad is one of the Frontier brains. Moving on to Gen 5, things get a little more interesting. We get Kieran and Bianca in Black and White, who are more about their own journeys than pushing you to be better. They develop as actual characters. Kieran begins to question what strength really means, and Bianca, who starts off as someone who doubts herself, begins to gain confidence and takes on new roles. But they don't really challenge you, the player. Then there's N, who isn't a traditional rival, but honestly, he's one of the best characters that the Pokemon franchise has ever had. He challenges your entire worldview. He's mysterious, idealistic, and your final battle with him feels more like a philosophical showdown than just a Pokemon fight. He's proof that a rival doesn't need to be hostile. They just need to stand opposed to what you believe in. Building on N's appearance in Black and White, we get Black 2 and White 2, which gave us a rival with a real edge again. Hugh is furious, he's angry, but not at you, the player. He's mad at Team Plasma because they stole his sister's Pokemon. He's got a personal vendetta, and it drives every single one of his battles. He's hot-headed, emotional, and overly intense at times. He doesn't want to be the best just to be the best. He wants justice. He wants to protect the people of the Unova region from Team Plasma. Kinda like a Batman, but in Pokemon, so I guess a Crow Batman. When we get to Gen 6, things implode. You get four rivals, Serena or Callum, depending who you play as, Shauna, Tierno, and Trevor. And somehow, none of them feel important or impactful. Serena or Callum could have been interesting, could have been your main rival, but they're basically just there. No drive, no tension. Shauna is sweet, but irrelevant. Tierno is more obsessed with dance routines and barely battles. And Trevor, he just wants to complete the Pokedex, which isn't bad, but he has about as much presence in the game as a Caterpie. This generation overall feels like Pokemon was scared to make anyone even slightly confrontational or challenging, something that has been widely talked about in the Pokemon community. It's like being in a friendly book club or battling your school field trip group, not competitive rivals. Moving on to Gen 7, you get Hau in Sun and Moon. And I like Hau. He's a good guy. Happy, supportive, positive, but again, there's no competitive feeling, no friction between you and him through the game. He loses, shrugs it off, and offers you a Malasada. Eventually, he does become the Kahuna of Melee Melee Island in the post-game content, but he's not really a rival. Then there's Gladion. Gladion isn't your official rival by any means, but let's be real, he feels more like a rival than Hau ever could. From the second you meet him, you can tell something's off. He's angry, defensive, even secretive. He's got a Type Null on his team, a Pokemon literally designed to fight Ultra Beasts. And while you're just vibing your way through the Island Challenge, he's carrying this trauma tied to his family, the Aether Foundation, and his runaway sister, not to mention his connections to Team Skull. Gladion's not trying to make friends, he's trying to prove something. He has stakes. Real, actual stakes. And when you battle him, you feel those stakes. He's the most emotionally charged character in those games. In fact, a lot of people would argue that Gladion is the true rival of Gen 7 because he brings a lot of character that Hau frankly just doesn't. If Gladion had been your main rival, Gen 7 would have had one of the best rival arcs in all of Pokemon. In Gen 8, Pokemon Sword and Shield gave us 3 rivals, Hop, Bede, and Marnie. Hop starts off strong as a rival. He wants to live up to Leon and be out of his brother's shadow, eventually overtaking him and being the champion. He has confidence until he starts losing. And when he loses badly, especially to Bede, he begins to spiral. But instead of rising to the challenge, he kind of levels out into this happy to help sidekick by the end, and the rivalry just kind of fizzles out. Then there's Marnie. She's calm, quiet, focused. She doesn't trash talk you, but you can tell she wants to win. She even becomes a gym leader, which is awesome. But the game doesn't give her much of a spotlight outside of Team Yell cheering her on because she's related to peers. Next is Bede, who is kind of just a jerk. I mean, he's rude, he's brash, he's confident, he thinks you're beneath him. He literally gets kicked out of the gym challenge for being reckless. Then comes back later as a fairy-type gym leader. Bede's arc is incredible, and he never tries to be your friend, which, honestly, gives him that same fresh of breath air feeling that Gladion did in Gen 7. But instead of leaning into that, once again the game centers on Hop, the nice and safe option as the rival, to help the player out through the whole story of the Galar region. Finally, in Scarlet and Violet, we get Nemona, and she's a mix. Gameplay-wise, Nemona actually brings a competitive nature to her rivalry, and her team is really strong. But character-wise, she's weirdly obsessed with you. She praises you constantly, she never doubts you, and while it's refreshing to have a rival who's competent, it still doesn't feel like a rivalry. It feels like you're battling your number one fan, which is fine and new, but not exciting. And that was it for Rivals, until we got DLC, and we got Kieran. And finally, Pokemon remembered how to write a rival. Kieran starts off as this sweet and awkward kid. He looks up to you. He's shy and insecure, and honestly just wants to prove himself. But as the Teal Mask story unfolds, things change. You unintentionally humiliate him. You're the outsider who shows up and wins everything, gets the legendary Pokemon. You overshadow him. He starts to spiral because of this. Hard. By the time the Indigo Disc rolls around, Kieran is an angry, emotional kid, driven, and he's trained like hell to beat you, even becoming the top student at Blueberry Academy. When you fight him, it's not just a battle, it's emotional. He's not there to support you, he's there to finally win and beat you and prove that he is better than you. And when he doesn't, he spirals even harder, losing everything he worked so hard to become. Kieran's arc has everything a great rivalry needs. Jealousy, growth, motivation, and a payoff that is cathartic. He realizes at the end that he was wrong, and you guys start over as friends. He's one of the best written characters Pokemon has had in a long time. And for once, it feels like the game wants you to be a little uncomfortable with your rival. So, to answer the question, why did rivals stop being rivals? It's because of a few reasons. First of all, Pokemon shifted more toward a younger, friendlier tone. They want the games to be encouraging and accessible for younger kids. So having a rival who thrashes you and trashes you for being weak, that doesn't really fit. Secondly, difficulty has gone way down. XP share is automatic in the new games, trainers are under-leveled, you never really need to be pushed anymore. So the rival's role kind of became redundant. And third, the focus moved from challenging your character to supporting your growth, which is fine. But it means that most modern rivals are less about competition and more about being part of your hype squad and your friend. Blue, Silver, and Kieran all had arcs and character growth along with the player in their games. A great rival does not need to be mean, but they do need to have fire and passion behind their beliefs. They need to want to beat you, or need to represent an obstacle, something that makes you, the player, want to get better. They should grow alongside you, having their own character arcs. While the other rivals are all nice, they're supportive, but a lot of them feel like glorified tutorials with catchphrases and plot devices to help move the story along in the game. So what do you think? Are we just nostalgic for Pokemon like it was? Or did Pokemon rivals really stop being good? Were they ever actually good in the first place? Let me know in the comments below. Who's your favorite or least favorite rival? Like the video, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.